So we will learn even more about this innovation, and then more on how it impacts a critically endangered animal that is often accidental bycatch. And what's also an interesting aspect is how they help fishermen to implement it. It's my honor to welcome Sahra Skripsky.
All right, as Michelle already said, hi, I'm Sahra. I am the field program lead at the Canadian Wildlife Federation based in Nova Scotia, Canada. And you just got to hear a quick rundown by Devotion about what on-demand is. So I'll be presenting how on-demand gear eliminates buoy lines from fisheries, thereby eliminating the unnecessary suffering of bycatch, in this case, the North Atlantic right whale. Perfect. So, anyone heard of the Canadian Wildlife Federation before? That's fair. So we are a nonprofit organization based across Canada, and we are committed, and our mission really is about conserving and inspiring the conservation of Canada's wildlife and wildlife habitat. So we do that through collaborating with the users of the environment we are trying to conserve and using evidence-based conservation. So in this case, it means that we are trying to conserve the North Atlantic right whale, and we do that by working with harvesters, mainly lobster and snow crab harvesters. These are just some examples of our partners that we host at our warehouse every year, try to get to as many individuals throughout the Maritimes. So this is Canada. Most of our work is based in the Maritimes, so in the blue here, and we just recently expanded to British Columbia on the west coast of Canada. Where there are no North Atlantic right whales, but entanglement occurs everywhere. So we are hoping to expand our on-demand program over there as well. So, quick intro to our fisheries. Our number one fishery in the Maritimes is lobster. It occurs all over the Maritimes, so conditions really vary from the Bay of Fundy, strongest tides in the world, to the Gulf. So, of course, harvesters are always going to do things a little differently. Some of them fish singles, one buoy line per traps, where others have a string. Also, in Nova Scotia, everyone calls strings trawls. So I'm going to try to continue to say strings, but if trawl slips out, I'm talking about a string of traps. And then there's also sometimes strings that have 2 buoy lines, and that can have 5, 10, 40, or even more traps on a string. Next up is snow crab, also known as queen crab. This is mainly fished in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, so they use single 1 buoy line per trap, and the traps are actually 7 foot in diameter, so as you can see, they're quite large. Generally, the vessels aren't that big though, so harvesters have normally less than 20 pots on their vessel. The efforts of both these fisheries are managed by Canada, including fishery seasons, quota for snow crab, minimal legal size, soak time, everything like that. Okay, on to the North Atlantic right whale. So they got their name because they were the right whale to hunt during the whaling. Because they have such thick blubber, they would float whenever whalers killed them. So it was very convenient for them to just tow them in. They are found on the eastern shore of Canada and the States. As I have already said, critically endangered, there are less than 400 left, so we are really motivated to conserve this species. Historically, in the summer months, they would just hang out in the Bay of Fundy of Canada and on the eastern coast of the US, but now there's been a distribution shift where more and more are coming up into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where now about a third to half the population is there. And as I said, the Gulf is a pretty densely fished area. So now we have high density of fishing, a lot of buoy lines in the water at the same time that whales are present, which means that there's a high chance of entanglement, which is exactly what happened. In 2017, about 17 of these whales were found dead, 11 from the Gulf of St. Lawrence, which is not what you want when a species is critically endangered. So Canada was committed to kind of updating how we monitor these whales in our waters. Entanglements are pretty brutal, I will say. Sorry for the photos if anyone's squeamish. But this is just highlighting kind of the reality of what these whales experience in our waters right now. About 85% of the entire population has been entangled at least once in their lives, and about 25 of them are going to get entangled again annually. So, not only is this pretty brutal, it can affect the overall body condition of these whales, resulting in skinnier whales. Instead of having a nice, thick, chubby whale, you have very skinny ones. This is impacting how they feed, how they move, their reproductive rate, which is now increased. So instead of reproducing every 2 to 4 years, it's more like every 5 to 6. So whenever we're trying to recover population, we really want them to breed. So yeah, talking about management. So Canada, after 17 of these whales died in, on the eastern coast, there we go, we started looking at what we could do. So first we really looked at where the whales are, and this just highlights how dense of a population is found in the Gulf. So Canada started really putting in efforts to look for these whales. They supported ghost gear removal to make sure that there's no ghost gear entangling these whales. They also, which is the biggest one, imposed fishery closures. So if there's no buoy line in the water, no whales can get entangled. They also supported harvesters using on-demand gear, which I'll get to in a second. So all of these efforts prevent entanglements. There's also work being done to minimize the harms to whales through low break and strength gear. Has anyone heard of low break and strength gear? Okay, fresh crowd, sweet. So, like I said, fishery closures are the main way that we protect these whales in our water. So anytime there is a North Atlantic whale spotted, whether it's an acoustic detection or visual detection from at sea or at air, all fishing has to stop, which is great. That means all these whales are now safe in our water. But bad news is harvesters can't make their livelihood. We don't want that. So the whole goal of this program, which I'll get to eventually, is we want to find a way to coexist with the whales and ensure that harvesters can catch their fish, or lobster and snow crab. There's 2 different types, by the way, seasonal closures versus dynamic. It kind of changes throughout the years, but basically, one, you can go back into the area about 2 weeks after the first whale was seen. If it's a seasonal closure, you can't go back in at all until the season's done. Yes, okay, quickly wanted to mention low break and strength gear. So the whole idea of low break and strength is you insert a gear modification within the buoy line, and this gear mod is meant to break at 1,700 pounds. So the whole idea is if a whale becomes entangled in this rope, the gear mod would break and the whale would be able to swim free. So we did a lot of work with these gear mods. As you can see, they're a little scary to use. The crew weren't excited. And we found that some do hold up and could be suitable for our fisheries. However, others, as you saw that orange sleeve just snap, others aren't so durable for our actual fishery. Also, there's no evidence to support that these gear mods reduce or they still harm whales, so we don't really like that this is an option. There's no evidence that it helps reduce the severity or that whales are actually able to free themselves, which is what happened. A North Atlantic right whale got entangled in a buoy line that had this gear mod in it, and unfortunately, it is most likely dead just because the buoy line wrapped around its mouth. It can't feed. It has not been spotted since it was entangled last December. So, I'm gonna stop talking about whales dying now. Atlantic Canada really relies on the economic gain of snow crab and lobster. These are the maps just showing how many coastal communities fish. Not only do the license holders bring in a lot of economic gain, the crew, processors, buyers, restaurants, tourism, everything like that gives thousands of jobs to Atlantic Canada. So we want to make sure we find a way to support these communities, which is where on-demand gear comes in. Devotion already kind of gave you a rundown of what on-demand gear is, but basically it removes that traditional buoy line and holds it on bottom in a rope containment system, or it replaces it completely with a lift bag system that uses compressed air to inflate a lift bag and carry the gear to the surface. Each system, which also I know that sounds like really, really intense, but I've worked with very old school harvesters, and if they can get it, I have no doubt you guys can. All of them work basically the same. They have a deck box and a transducer that stays on the vessel. You throw the transducer overboard whenever you want to call up your string, excuse me. And then you use surface software app to trigger the system. This is the hardest part. Getting a harvester to remember his Apple ID, password, code, whatever. Forget about it. You call their daughters, you call their wives, and they like go get their credit card. And it's honestly my least favorite part of this job. But you know what? They're always willing to try, which I appreciate. With our testing, we found that the rope containment systems work really well basically everywhere in the Maritimes, except in the Bay of Fundy. Like I said, strongest tides in the world. And we found that lift bags work better there just because that kind of consistent inflation of the lift bag helps it to fight the tide and stay at the surface longer. Rope containment systems still work there, but we've seen them get pulled under in a minute when there's really tide ripping that ebb tide. And if there's a harvest moon, funny enough. So this is great, on-demand gear. It removes the buoy line from the water column. However, it also removes that buoy at the surface, which is how harvesters tell where their string is. Sorry, I keep saying trawl. So, not great. What are we doing to fix that problem? Currently, on-demand gear uses GPS surface location as their marking system. So the idea is whenever you throw your trawl over, you hit set, and on the interface, it will mark on the surface where it is, just like a normal chart plotter. So again, nothing new for harvesters. However, if you're in a highly densely fished area, you really are at a higher risk for gear overlay or gear conflict. So right now we are testing directional ranging, which will give you the on-bottom live position of the gear. So instead of saying, oh, I think it landed over here, you will be able to talk to it and it will tell you where its true position is. We don't think that directional ranging is necessary for all fisheries, especially if harvesters in a closure. We're not gonna have 300 harvesters in a closure at one time. It's just gonna be, 20 or so guys. Sweet. So on-demand systems aren't that new actually, but its application in fisheries were. So we decided, okay, before we say, oh yeah, this is great, on-demand gear all the way, we decided to test it. And how did we do that? We started by talking to harvesters, one by one, dock demos, showing them gear, asking them if they've had a closure before, what was that like for them, are they willing to just try a solution that would allow them to fish in a closure? And turns out most of them said yes. So since 2019, we've been testing on-demand gear throughout the Maritimes. This map is just showing you the different areas we've done a trial. You'll notice that there's none on Eastern Canada, Eastern Nova Scotia, sorry. That's because North Atlantic great whales are not monitored there, so if there's no indication that there is a whale there, even though we know that they're coming up from the Bay of Fundy over here into the Gulf, that means they have to go here. But no one's looking, so no closures occur there. Harvesters don't think they need this gear yet. We'll see. These trials occur out of season, so according to our license, we have to have a hybrid trawl. So we have a traditional buoy line on the string, and then an on-demand unit on the other side. Basically, we just go out to where the guys normally fish, throw over the string, haul it up via the acoustic release, and do that again and again. Currently, we've done over 1,600 hauls, and we have about over a 90% success rate overall. These are some examples of on-demand systems we test. Again, we're an NGO, we're not rolling in money. So we try to test as many systems that are on the market. Generally, most of them are from the States, except Devotion and Assured, which are both Canadian. Buoy is actually from Australia. EdgeTech, though, Guardian, Desert Star, Ropeless Riser, and Smelts are all American. Smelts and Ropeless Riser are also lift bag options. Oh, also price range, because everyone wants to know that. Generally, they're expensive, so expensive. So I'm going to start out and say we do not recommend harvesters buy this gear themselves unless they're getting impacted by a closure every year where it's really going to be worth it. Also, this is very technical technology, so you can't just leave it on your front lawn like you do your traps. It has to be stored safely. So that can range from about $2,000 Canadian to over $10,000 Canadian each. So yeah, I know, it sucks. If anyone can build a cheaper one, you'd be killing it. So here are some results of our outer season trials. Here we have our success rate. This is the failure subclass variation, while this figure is the opposite. The failure rate is just in gray, and then I have the success subclasses variations as well. So we define a success as throwing the gear over, triggering it via the acoustic release, the mechanism releasing the system, the buoy or lift bag coming up to the surface, and haul as usual. Anything else is a failure. So if you had to haul from the traditional buoy line, we count that as a failure. We classify everything in order to build context. If something doesn't work, you need to be able to say to a harvester why it didn't work. Also, we give all the results to the developers of this gear. Sometimes it's, a harvester would say they don't like the color of the on-demand system. We tell the guys that. We say, okay, you don't have enough buoyancy to fight the current. Anything and everything, we will always tell the developers. And in turn, they make it more suitable for Canadian fisheries. These are some results of the trials done this year. We did not test 2 systems just because we can't afford to fix them right now. But overall, we had a great year. Did about 7 trials, 2 of the gear location marking trials as well. And we hope to continue testing this gear moving forward. Which brings me to the CanFISH gear landing program. So one thing we do with the trials is test the gear, make sure it works, but we also make sure that it has a high enough success rate to be in our CanFISH gear landing program. So since 2022, when closures really started to impact a lot of harvesters, we decided to use a grant we got from the government and buy a bunch of on-demand units, different ones. So we have EdgeTech, we have Devotion, all the kind of big names that we were testing in our trials. And we have this full warehouse ready to go if anyone calls us and they're impacted by a North Atlantic right whale closure. We drive out to them, sometimes 8 hours, sometimes more. Lend them the gear, train them on how to use it, and then they're able to go and fish in the closure. So currently we've lent gear to 32 harvesters. Over 400,000 pounds of snow crab has been caught with on-demand gear from CanFISH. In Canada, more on-demand caught snow crab has been done, but just with CanFISH. And we've removed over 500 buoy lines from the water column at a time when North Atlantic right whales were present, which is the whole goal. So on-demand gear does change the way you fish. So in snow crab, they have to string up, I guess. So now they have ground lines in between the pots. In lobster, it looks basically the same, except no traditional buoy line. We're also supporting the use of this gear in season in open areas as a way for more harvesters to adopt this gear. Currently this year, we lent gear to 4 harvesters within the Bay of Fundy. They fished with it for 7 weeks, and they caught over 2,500 pounds of lobster. This was the first time that lobster was caught with on-demand gear in Canada. It was harvester collected data, so we're currently processing it, and I could not show the results. But I will say the Canadian government required 1 traditional buoy line on the end of the string, just to ensure that no gear was lost. We've also expanded to the West Coast. So same trials without the idea of North Atlantic right whales being the kind of pusher here. However, we're on the West Coast, humpbacks and gray whales are entangled quite often, so we're assessing the risk of entanglement there and hope to replicate the CanFISH gear lending program. Okay, so key messages. We know that the closures are the solution to the entanglements of North Atlantic right whales, but that does not help our fishing communities. So on-demand gear is the answer to closures, which is the answer to entanglements. If you want to learn more, you can visit our CanFISH gear website, or feel free to attend the Ropeless Consortium and the North Atlantic Right Whale Consortium, which will be in Halifax next year, which is in Nova Scotia. So I'll see you guys there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. There's room for one question. Nobody dares. Oh, yeah, there.
Thank you, really nice presentation. And I was wondering, do you already have data on the number of entanglement? Have they decreased, or do you still, it's still quite new? What's the status?
That's a great question. So we don't have the stats of whether this gear is reducing entanglements, but we are seeing less in our waters. However, this is some like Canada politics thing, so there's less surveillance of these whales being done. So if we're not looking for them, we're not going to find them, kind of thing. So it's hard to say that it actually has been reduced.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah.